I told Coach Bub earlier that's the most applause I've got coming back to Clarion in 36 years. I appreciate it. And it is nice to come back up here without that feeling in the pit of my stomach, knowing I've got to put a team on the mat against Coach Bub. So it's nice to be here and have a different kind of anxiety going on. Thank you for the kind words. Congratulations to all those being inducted, and thank you to the selection committee for this very special honor. That when you say 36 years, before I begin, I'd like to introduce my wife, Sue. There should be an award for anyone that stays married to someone for 36 years that's a Division I coach, and who also thought she attended her last banquet when I retired. So Sue, would you wave? This presents me a very unique opportunity to say thank you. For I don't believe there is any achievement without a certain degree of luck, nor I believe there is any achievement without quite a few significant people helping you at important times along the way. I do not believe you're in complete control of the cards you receive, but you do have a responsibility to play them the best you can. In many respects, the cards I received were exceptional. Several years before I got into high school, a young man named Jack Sennett started a wrestling program at the high school I was at. He turned out to be outstanding and took a special interest in my brother and myself. 2, my brother and I were recruited into one of the finest wrestling programs in the country by National Hall of Fame coach Bob Bub. And 3, I was provided an opportunity to try and build a wrestling program at West Virginia University at the age of 25. As I reflect back, by far the most important card was the second one. By the time my brother and I arrived at Clarion University, there was already within the wrestling program a culture in a village that was developed. That culture, very simply stated, was you were expected to have an outstanding work ethic, and it was expected to broaden and deepen as you matured in the program. Secondly, you were expected to set goals far outside your reach and work diligently toward trying to achieve them, and expect to succeed. The people that were attracted to Clarion weren't always the strongest or the fastest. They were willing to suffer longer, work harder. That it was almost worn like a badge of honor to those that accepted that challenge. And I had forgotten, now that I'm old, what that felt like. And I was reminded recently as I was asked to speak at a banquet at an event in Erie, Pennsylvania. And one of the people being honored, one of the men being honored, was a former basketball player here. As the event came to an end, he came over to me and we were chatting, and he said, "I need to ask you, were you one of those wrestlers that used to run in the middle of winter with snow coming down out to Interstate 80 and back?" And I smiled and said, "We weren't very smart." And he just shook his head and walked away. And it still felt good. It still felt good. That the village that was created was partially created. Coach Bub would speak to different civic groups. He would speak to different faculty groups. He would speak at different high schools. And people started to become intrigued by this sport that demanded so much of its athletes, in that they went out there by themselves in pursuit of their own individual goals and collective goals of their team and program. And people started to recognize and support us, and that there were so many people as I went across campus that were interested and wanted to support. And I can remember many of their names: Dr. Donakai, Dr. Hartley, Dr. Shirey, Dr. Johnson, Dr. Vida, Dr. Greta. And if you were by any of their offices, you could stop in and they would welcome you, and it felt like at the time that you would receive a very respectful adult conversation. And this was empowering, that you had that kind of support, and it added up. That I remember before important matches, we'd be warming up in the wrestling room, and Dr. Gimmel would stop by, and we'd stop, and he wanted to wish a few words of encouragement and wish us good luck. And a little smileable moment, if there is such a word, that one early morning class, it was probably 10 a.m., but it felt very early to us at the time, that I'm going into Pierce Auditorium with Dale Kowski, and he was a big old country guy, very dry sense of humor. And as we were walking in, President Gimmel was walking out, and he just looked over and he said, "Good morning, Craig." And I said, "Good morning, President." And Dale thought this was the funniest thing. For months, out of nowhere, he would say, "Good morning, President." But this was part of our experience. This was part of the support that we had going through this program. One of the years, we were able to put out a lineup that consisted of my brother, myself, NCAA champion Don Rohn, NCAA champion Wade Shawls, NCAA champion Bill Simpson, and one of the finest heavyweights in the country, Chuck Corrier. This presented us an opportunity to compete with anyone across the country, and we did. That particular year, the University of Oklahoma came into Clarion University, #1 ranked in the country. The university responded, the community surrounding us responded. There were no seats, people sat around the mat, and indulge me here. My brother and I began the match with 2 wins that helped support Clarion have an upset win over the #1 ranked team in the country, Oklahoma. And this led their coach, Stan Abel, as he went across the country that year, to say, "You haven't wrestled an away match till you go into that little gym at Clarion University." And those things still are a tremendous source of pride. And I'm going to share with you something that's a little off Clarion, but from a wrestling standpoint, I think it's really important. And I hope that Clarion will always have this kind of support. But I'm going to share a conversation I had with a former wrestler of mine, Wilbur Wolf. And Wilbur is now Brigadier General Wilbur Wolf and owns 2 software companies. He was a former Pennsylvania State champion. He had an outstanding career at West Virginia. And he was invited back to speak at commencement for ROTC. And they asked if I would come back and introduce him. And at the conclusion, he and I were talking, and I said, "Wilbur, why do you think we want our children to do such an emotionally and physically difficult sport like wrestling?" And he nodded his head, and he said, "It is." He said, "But there is nothing that teaches you leadership like the sport of wrestling." He said, "I oversee 5,000 soldiers, and I can spot almost immediately the soldier that had wrestling background." And he said, "The interesting thing is, he doesn't necessarily have to be very good, just that he committed to it." This opportunity tonight, I am more than appreciative to be able to have a moment to thank Clarion University, Clarion Wrestling, Coach Bob Button. And my wish and hope in finishing is that Clarion will always honor, respect, and support a wrestling program that allows young men to come in that are willing to work that hard, to come out the other side better, understand themselves better, and be able to use that experience to live a successful and effective life. Thank you very much.